Darn it, I got too greedy. That final 2 million probably tipped them off. I should have just let it go. I sensed something fishy with that bill. Darn it. Now they're closing in, though they seem to think I'm unaware. This'll help. I still have time to vanish and ensure they can't track me any further. Good thing I had a plan for this. But who am I? And who's after me? My current identity doesn't matter. It's vanishing soon. In 2 hours, I'll transform completely. The trail the pursuers are following will lead to a dead end before they gather enough info to unmask me. What I am, or soon will be, is a hacker, a damn good one, and a furious one, with a short list of targets. I'm going after odd cartels, monitoring their finances and discreetly tipping off the authorities with incriminating evidence. Personally, I've nailed 4 politicians, at least 50 cops, a dozen soldiers across borders, and countless other turncoats. Plus, I've drained over $100 million from their accounts, keeping a cut for myself, but funneling about 80% to various charities, mostly aiding dependents and supporting rehab programs. Why, you wonder? It all started with my little sister getting mixed up with the wrong guy. I really didn't approve of him, but she wouldn't heed my warnings. I tried everything, but she made her choice. I did my best to look out for her after our folks passed away. I've always had a knack for computers. However, the 2 bleak years I spent in solitary despair after identifying what remained of her body elevated me from skilled to almost supernatural. Holed up in the basement of our parents' old place, I delved into dark secrets and mastered their manipulation. I uncovered backdoors in most security systems. At some point during those years, damning intel about a gang of fiends who tortured and homicided my sister landed in the DEA's lap. Rival gangs got wind that this gang had state evidence and were using it to negotiate deals, prompting them to act faster than the authorities. So the government saved a bundle on legal battles. Now, those on my tail are on the cartel's payroll, the same cartel I relieved of about $30 million. I really should have stopped at $28 million, but I stumbled upon another small account. I sensed something fishy about it, but I was young, foolish, and still seething. Once that money passed through 40 accounts in 6 countries, my anti-hacking system started sounding alarms. They planted a trace program on the account they targeted, where the breach originated. It'll take them some time. They had to sift through around 100 IP addresses before even reaching a chain of bypass servers. I plugged in the flash drive and executed a few commands. The trail leading to me was effectively severed, leaving them no access to data. The vacant building I called home went up in flames due to a homeless fire that spiraled out of control. The hard drives, memory cards, and all my personal documents went up in smoke in a desert fire. Convinced there was no salvaging any info from the ashes, I hopped in my van and headed west, arriving in Las Vegas 4 days later. "Sweetheart, I need your help. The computer's acting wonky again," I pleaded with my lovely wife, Linda. "Honestly, Mark, how can a 25-year-old guy be so clueless with computers?" she quipped, planting a quick kiss on my forehead. A few clicks and keystrokes later, I was back to checking emails. "Dinner's in half an hour." "Thanks, dear," I replied, watching her retreat to the kitchen. It's been 2 years since Linda and I tied the knot, and I still can't believe my luck. After leaving my old life behind, I reinvented myself, working as a trucker at a local lumber mill. With decent wages, thanks to our trade union affiliation, I carefully withdrew a couple $100,000 from one of my offshore accounts and bought a cozy 3-bedroom house on an acre of land. I built a discreet structure next to the house for storage and set up a hidden room to revamp my computer system. It looked like a regular concrete floor, but underneath, it housed stairs leading underground. I made the decision to lay off chasing down our dealers and cartels for a bit. I had enough cash tucked away in case of emergencies, and it seemed wise to vanish for a while and let things simmer down. However, I didn't want to lose my expertise, and I needed to stay current with new tech. The shop was for my hobby of restoring classic muscle cars. Since my wife had zero interest in that, she never stepped foot in my store. It also provided me with the solitude to go online and dabble a bit without her catching on. You might wonder why I keep this side of me hidden from her. Well, she knows me as a simple mechanic and truck driver with little computer knowledge. Obviously, when we first met and started dating, I couldn't just come clean about being a hacker known as Ghost in the cyber underground. Firstly, the feds were after me for several cyber crimes, eager to recruit me for their own purposes. Secondly, there were some dangerous criminal outfits running down for me. If they caught wind of me, things would have turned ugly fast. How would our relationship fare after that? Need you even ask? After we tied the knot, I had a few more precautions to take. It was for her safety. If she remained oblivious, They couldn't exploit her for information. No, it's better that she only knows the man she married. Let me tell you a bit about my wife. First and foremost, she's the most gorgeous woman in the world to me. I often hear in stories how each woman is deemed the most beautiful, and I wonder how that can be. I won't sugarcoat it. To you, she might just seem average in appearance, but to me, she's a goddess. It's all about differing perspectives and tastes. She stands at 5'6", with wavy, coppery bronze hair flowing down to her mid-back. Her emerald green eyes are captivating, and she's a size 34D, with a small waist, flat tummy, slightly wider hips, and an incredibly attractive posterior measuring 40 inches. Her legs are long, slender, toned, and sun-kissed. She boasts a slender nose, high cheekbones, dimples when she smiles, full kissable lips, and a modest chin that's not overly prominent. So, how did we meet? I was on duty at the sawmill one afternoon when she walked in. She needed a couple of boards for shelving in her new apartment. As we selected her order, she mentioned her lack of proficiency with tools. Seizing the opportunity, I offered to swing by after work to set up the shelves. My only request? She'd buy the beer, and I'd accept dinner as payment the next evening. From there, dinner transitioned into dancing. Sorry to disappoint, but there's no scandalous lovemaking tale here. Our date concluded with a simple, chaste kiss on the cheek. Truth be told, I was rather apprehensive around women. Allow me to explain. When I pilfered all that money from the cartel, I was a scrawny 19-year-old, weighing in at 110 pounds, a complete computer nerd. My romantic encounters up to that point were non-existent. Since relocating to Las Vegas, I've only had 3 encounters with courtesans. The first was underwhelming. She seemed robotic. The second, at a brothel in Pahrump, at least pretended to care. The third, also in Pahrump, was more instructional. I paid for the entire night and had her truly teach me how to satisfy a woman. Now, I was in a relationship with a woman I genuinely admired. It wasn't until our 5th date that we finally had lovemaking. I treated her to dinner at the Stratosphere before hitting up a lively dance club on the Strip. After indulging in an expensive bottle of wine and a few drinks while dancing for a solid 2 hours, we headed back to my place. I used to think she was beautiful, but seeing her without clothes on, she was an absolute goddess. I didn't even need to ask. Her damp sheets confirmed everything was all right. As long as I made her happy, I was content. Apparently, the last courtesan I visited had taught me well. Additionally, I spent a whole year engaging in sports, which, combined with my work, increased my muscle mass and endurance. I now stood at 6 feet 1 inch tall. Despite considering myself a nerd, one thing I had never really considered was the size of my manhood. I just assumed I was average like everyone else. Of course, the courtesans raved about my size, but they had to, right? I didn't truly believe them when they praised my size. Linda and I dated for about 6 months before I popped the question, and 6 months later we tied the knot. We were happy together. Linda worked as an accountant for a large national company with an office in Las Vegas, pulling in a decent salary that, combined with mine, allowed us to live quite comfortably. I never needed to dip into my secret accounts. We dined at top-notch restaurants, caught shows, enjoyed rides on a nice pontoon boat on the lake, and both drove nice cars. Our bed life was pretty good, averaging about 4 times a week. Since we didn't have children yet, we made love all over the house, in the backyard, in the pool, in the hot tub. We relished the variety. Typically, after returning from work, I'd spend a couple of hours tinkering in my store before dinner. Half the time, I'd be working on one of my machines, while the other half, I'd be in the room playing on the computer. I wasn't doing anything explicitly wrong. I just hacked into places I shouldn't have been. I never actually stole anything or tampered with systems. I simply honed my skills. Sure, I could have pilfered loads of data and money, but I didn't want to leave any traces. After dinner, we'd cuddle up on the couch and watch a movie before turning in for the night. Sometimes our bedtime routine included a couple of hours of lovemaking before drifting off. I continued to exhibit my complete technological ineptitude. After all, who would suspect that someone who struggles to check their email is one of the world's most wanted hackers? Throughout all this time, I was hacking into the computer systems of banks, governments, and major corporations. I also reconfigured the legion of personal computer bots I once possessed. I concealed my whereabouts by launching my hacks from foreign servers, sometimes multiple servers simultaneously. About 6 months ago, I noticed Linda becoming a bit more tense. It didn't seem like a major issue at the time, though. Our frequency of lovemaking dropped from about 4 times a week to 2. She began working longer hours and seemed exhausted when she came home. Most nights, she'd head straight to the shower, eat dinner, then hit the hay. When I inquired, she mentioned something about a hefty bill they were trying to settle. It sounded plausible enough. Occasionally, she'd ring me up from her office on a Friday, letting me know she'd be hitting happy hour with some coworkers post-work. She'd done this enough times for me not to fret. After about 6 months, I inquired about the duration of these outings, figuring they'd either settle the bill or misplace it by then. Linda mentioned it'd likely be another week or two before things settled down again. Feeling she deserved some TLC after her hard work, I surprised her with a full day spa package for that Saturday. She was over the moon when I presented it to her on Wednesday night. After expressing her gratitude, we found ourselves in bed, enjoying each other immensely. Saturday rolled around and she departed for her spa day at 9 a.m. With a quick kiss goodbye, she headed out, not returning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I grabbed my coffee and headed to the shop to wrap up the engine I had on the bench. After about an hour's work, I took a break and made my way to the computer room. Up to that point, I intentionally refrained from hacking into Linda's company's systems. It was a principle I staunchly upheld, kind of like not fouling your own nest. I was resolute about this. I never meddled with the company I worked for, nor would I with the one she worked for. After logging in and checking my security programs, I started to ponder the nature of this significant account. Perhaps it was worth investigating further, maybe even accessing their servers to see what they held. Their security was laughably easy to bypass. I was in within minutes. My first destination, Linda's computer. Since she was working on the project, I figured I could glean some insights from there. Odd. There was nothing particularly noteworthy about the new major clients. I ran a few searches using keywords like offer, new client quote, and related terms, but found nothing. I then delved into her folders. That's when I stumbled upon a locked folder labeled Photos for James. Why did Linda have a folder of photos for that little weasel? Yes, I knew who James was. I'd met him several times at corporate events I attended with Linda. Despite her belief that he was quite adept with computers, I didn't particularly care for him. It took mere seconds to unlock the folder. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. Inside were dozens of photographs without clothes of Linda in her office, some depicting her engaged in carnal acts with another man in various positions. What struck me the hardest was the inclusion of photos of carnal activities she had consistently denied me. I sat there, staring blankly at the images. In that moment, a part of me felt like it died. Eventually, I snapped out of it and began to contemplate confronting her as soon as she returned home. Divorcing this deceitful woman was inevitable. I still had a few hours before her return, so I pressed on with my search for more clues. I suspected this all began about 6 months ago, when I first noticed a change in her behavior. Upon delving into her email, I was met with an even greater shock. Several email exchanges revealed that her affair with this other person was far more long-term than I had initially thought. Apparently, they had been involved for about a year before she even met me. If that's the case, why did she start a relationship with me in the first place? What's really going on here? Another email mentioned accounting discrepancies with some major clients, as well as their own company, along with something about an offshore account. I switched over to James's computer. There, too, were photographs of Linda, some depicting her in what seemed to be a motel room and in another man's bedroom. Realizing I needed more time for this, I decided to make copies of both his and Linda's computers, as well as their folders on the company network, onto a spare drive on my server. Out of habit, I checked the personnel folder on the server and paused when I noticed my name on one of the folders. Before disconnecting from the network, I discreetly installed spyware on both computers and the server, ensuring that all their activities would be redirected to my system. Needless to say, work on my cars took a back seat for a while. When Linda returned from her spa day, she expressed her gratitude with a night of passionate lovemaking. Yes, I was disgusted by her actions, but I'm only human. I couldn't pass up the opportunity for incredible closeness with such a beautiful, enthusiastic, and energetic woman. She could be the devil incarnate, and I'd still seize the chance. In my eyes, she was exactly that. Come Sunday, I returned to my shop. Linda was still asleep, so I took the opportunity to access her phone and install spyware on it. This way, text messages would be discreetly copied to my computer system, and all phone calls would be monitored and digitally recorded on a separate hard drive. I'd also be able to track her online activities. Linda left around 10 a.m., mentioning she was meeting a friend for a shopping trip. Since she had disabled the Find My Friends app on her phone, I resorted to hacking into her car's internal GPS to track her movements. Surprisingly, she indeed went to the mall. Once I confirmed she wouldn't be back soon, I seized the opportunity to take her laptop. My first task was to duplicate all its contents onto another hard drive. Subsequently, I installed a keylogger program and configured the camera for remote access. Aware that I didn't have much time before returning the laptop to its original place, I quickly skimmed through her browser history. It was then that I stumbled upon a second email address. I also noticed multiple visits to a bank in the Cayman Islands. That would require further investigation later. I wiped off some grease and oil from my hands and face to create the illusion of having worked on the car when I heard Linda return home. Then it was the usual routine: shower, dinner, a movie, and off to bed. For a week, I meticulously upheld the facade of an oblivious, caring husband. Each evening, I'd head to the shop, ostensibly to tinker with one of my cars for a couple of hours. In reality, I was sifting through heaps of data I had gathered. Then, on a Tuesday evening, I stumbled upon an exchange between Linda and James that piqued my interest. James cautioned her about deleting the browsing history on my laptop after using it. Why did she need my laptop? Sure, I had configured my laptop to connect to servers right after purchasing it, but the notion of spying on myself had never crossed my mind. The following evening, while reviewing the day's updates from their work computers, I noticed another data stream incoming. Instantly recognizing it as from my personal laptop, I prioritized it over everything else. As I delved into this new stream, it became evident that money transfers were occurring. I activated the laptop camera and redirected the feed to another screen. Linda was working on my computer, Bluetooth earpiece in place. The microphone captured her voice during a phone call. Using a third screen, I initiated a live feed of her conversation. I watched and listened as Linda, under James's guidance, transferred around $50,000 from a fabricated account at their company to a bank in the Cayman Islands. And all this was orchestrated through my computer. After completing the task, she wiped the day's history and logged out. What's really happening here? I hadn't yet had a chance to inspect my personnel file from their HR folder. To compound matters, I discovered I had been appointed as a computer security consultant, unbeknownst to me, of course. James, as the head of their IT department, apparently made the hiring decisions. Furthermore, I found several payments for my services all funneled into the Cayman Islands account. It was clear. I was unwittingly roped into a scheme where Linda and James utilized my computer and IP address to transfer large sums of money from a fictitious account at their company to an offshore bank. Additionally, I learned of Linda and James's affair. Even before meeting Linda, I could sense I was being drawn into something sinister. It was time for a change of strategy. Now fully aware of the situation, I needed to assess the extent of the problem and devise a plan of action. It was dire. Upon scrutinizing the Cayman Islands account, I discovered nearly $10 million stashed away. Reviewing the transactions, I noticed they commenced about 6 months after Linda and I tied the knot. They had also attempted to obfuscate the computer used to execute the money theft. Adding to the complexity, a deeper dive into my personal file unearthed several alarming red flags. When the situation inevitably hit the fan, I was squarely in the crosshairs. So, what's my move now? Surprisingly, it wasn't too difficult to play it cool around this woman. Did she want to be engaged in physical relationship? I indulged her. As things progressed, I found myself enjoying both of them. What can I say? She's attractive. Yes, I seized every opportunity for closeness with her. The following Saturday, I delved into her emails from the beginning of our acquaintance. That's when I discovered they had singled me out as their scapegoat from the start. While she found me appealing and believed being engaged in physical relationship with me wouldn't be a hassle, she harbored concerns about my evident lack of computer skills. James, on the other hand, saw it as an advantage. The less I knew about computers, the less likely I was to uncover their scheme. Now it was time for a retaliatory plan. I began orchestrating everything. First, I opened a couple of new bank accounts. Then, I activated the bot army I had assembled. Most of these bots would serve as a distraction, but I had a small group that could be traced back. It would pose a challenge, requiring a skilled hacker to trace it to its source. I didn't want it to be too straightforward. Naturally, I deleted the personnel folder containing my name from Linda's company servers. Additionally, I hacked and altered all file transfers conducted on my laptop to display a different IP address. To prevent a recurrence, I unleashed a potent virus on my laptop and disconnected it from my clandestine servers. Later that evening, when I checked my email, I discovered that a virus had ravaged my laptop from the spam I had opened, virtually rendering it useless. I wasn't surprised to see concern etched on Linda's face when she saw the damage. The next morning, I stumbled upon a conversation between Linda and James. Apparently, they were nearing the end of their scheme. They just needed 2 more transfers to secure another $10 million before springing the trap on me. The plan was to suddenly uncover the theft. Naturally, since Linda would be the one to make the discovery, she would spearhead the investigation. Meanwhile, James, as the IT manager, would oversee the cyber aspect. No wonder all evidence pointed directly at me. Linda, of course, would file for divorce while I languished in jail. Then, in about a year, she'd marry James. Sure, there might be some suspicion regarding Linda's possible involvement, but she would deflect by citing her investigation and her belief that I had been concealing my computer knowledge from her. Moreover, it would appear evident that she was a sufferer, as I had specifically targeted her and exploited her to gain access to the company's computer systems. They chuckled at the idea of me fielding questions about the missing money when I was clueless about what the police were talking about. Linda offered to purchase me a replacement laptop, suggesting they could finalize the last transfers within the next 3 weeks. Now, I had a clear deadline. Come Monday, I informed my boss that I needed a week off for personal matters, which wasn't an issue given my surplus of free time. I scoured the internet to locate the toughest, most ruthless divorce attorney in town and scheduled an appointment for the following day. While they believed they had a 3-week window, they'd be fortunate to make it to 2. Upon returning home, I powered up the computer and got down to business. I accessed James's home computer for an IT expert. You'd think he'd be savvy enough to power it down when not in use, but no such luck. He merely turned off the monitor. I routed his computer through a server in Belarus, though ultimately the connection would be obliterated. His computer would be a dead end for anyone attempting to trace it. The cartel I infiltrated 5 years ago had at least taught me a thing or two about security. Despite changing their accounts and passwords, they still utilize the same banks. Updated passwords are only effective if you don't store them on personal computers, which are vulnerable to phishing attacks embedded in email links promising products any multimillionaire would desire. This was just the preliminary phase. I'd deal with James after I finished with Linda. James wouldn't survive this, and I still needed him to bring Linda down. As per my routine, I headed to my shop to tinker with my car. Meanwhile, she dashed off to Walmart to procure a new laptop for me. During her absence, I laid the groundwork for the scheme. It was crucial for her to be present at home when using the computer. If she could prove she wasn't home, she'd have an alibi. I couldn't allow that. Upon her return, she messaged me that she'd purchased the laptop and estimated it would take about an hour to set it up for me. I expressed my gratitude and got to work. Initially, he severed all connections with James. Despite my disdain for her, I still didn't want her to suffer. James would likely face torture and end of life, while Linda might only end up in prison for decades, who knows. I established a separate server route to Linda's laptop, providing a direct link to her work computer and then to the company servers. $20 million was funneled from the company into 4 accounts under her name. Travel arrangements were finalized, securing a one-way ticket for her to the Cayman Islands on Thursday morning. Before she left her computer, I purged James from her contacts, deleted all emails with him, and wiped the account's history clean. Subsequently, I removed all my spyware, taking a calculated risk that she wouldn't have enough time to react. Too bad. Next, I terminated and erased the connection with her laptop. After completing these tasks, I remotely disabled the wireless router in the house. I possessed a separate superior router in the store, unbeknownst to her. A message surfaced from the spyware I planted on her phone. Apparently, she had finished setting up the laptop for me when the internet suddenly vanished, just as she was about to execute another transfer on my computer. I couldn't help but laugh as they grappled with the issue. While they were preoccupied, I swiftly transferred all the stolen money into new accounts under Linda's name. Once the account was depleted, I promptly closed it. Lastly, I removed the spyware from Linda's phone to prevent any unwanted attention. Satisfied with my actions, I headed out for dinner. Tomorrow promised to be an eventful day, to say the least. Linda appeared visibly anxious, to put it mildly. Upon my arrival, she informed me that my new computer was set up and ready, but the internet was down, preventing me from logging in or checking my email. Little did she know, this posed minimal inconvenience for me. Throughout the evening, she remained preoccupied, engrossed in her phone during the entire movie. I sensed her growing disappointment, suspecting her attempts to access the account had failed. She also seemed to be messaging someone. As I retired to bed, a smile crept onto my face. There would be no closeness that night. The following morning, I left the house before Linda departed for work, biding my time until my appointment with the lawyer. I couldn't help but wonder how Linda's day would unfold. Soon enough, I would have all the answers. Finally, I was ushered into my lawyer's office. You know those TV dramas where a dashing lawyer, impeccably dressed in a suit that's both professional and seductive, strides into the courtroom and effortlessly outmaneuvers the opposition? That was my lawyer. Standing at 5'6", with an angelic face, curves that could make a race car swerve, legs that seemed to stretch for miles, and a chest that could incite a war. Within 2 minutes of the hearing, it was clear she was going to be a formidable force in the courtroom. You could practically hear your heart harmonizing with the choir in the room. After ensuring confidentiality, I confided in her about my wife's infidelity throughout our entire relationship. Then, I detailed the embezzlement and the setup. When she asked how I knew all this, I gave a partial explanation. Well, let's be honest, I spun quite a tale. I claimed I was using my wife's laptop because mine was malfunctioning. And that's when I stumbled upon a folder filled with explicit photos and discovered her incriminating emails to her lover. Those emails laid bare her betrayal and their illicit dealings. I just wanted out of this marriage before the proverbial hit the fan. She agreed to handle the case and begin preparing the necessary documents. She mentioned she could serve her by week's end. However, I urged her to hold off for a moment. I had a sudden stroke of inspiration and didn't want to tip my hand too soon. With that, we wrapped up the meeting and I returned home, fired up my system, reactivated my home Wi-Fi, and got down to business. I left spyware operational on Linda's work computer. Apparently, things went haywire pretty quickly. Bright and early the next morning, an emergency meeting convened. The $20 million theft was uncovered, sparking an immediate investigation. Meanwhile, I managed to hack into James's phone. James traced the theft back to Linda and discovered their account had been drained, and the funds transferred to new ones totaling $20 million. Accusations flew, but no plausible explanations emerged. Suddenly, Linda received an email summoning her to a meeting with the CEO, CFO, and head of security. This was bound to be interesting. The sound of several cars pulling into my driveway interrupted my leisure. I secured the premises, heading to the main store and ensuring the secret door was locked. No need for anyone to poke around in there. To keep up appearances, I slicked some lube on myself to mimic working on my car. Exiting the store, I spotted police cars and large Chevrolet Suburbans. The officers wore standard uniforms, but those emerging from the SUVs sported windbreakers with FBI emblazoned on them. Curious. I barely glanced at the warrants before ushering them into the house, offering full cooperation since I had nothing to hide. Playing guide, I pointed out my wife's computer and mentioned mine, which had barely been touched since we got it yesterday, with the Wi-Fi down last night. Take what you need, I said. I'm not really savvy with computers. My story held up during several hours of harsh questioning at the police station. After all, I was just a truck driver with minimal computer knowledge. I professed ignorance about my wife's work as an accountant, insisting I didn't know her clients. A one-way ticket out of the country. Only she would know about that. Poor James, forced to testify against her, must have felt deeply betrayed upon discovering she had siphoned off the money into her own accounts, leaving him with nothing. They soon realized I was clueless about the situation. Despite a thorough search of my store, they failed to uncover the entrance to the computer room. Eventually, they sent me home. Linda was arrested while I was being interrogated. James, witnessing the discovery of the money, must have been gutted to learn she had cut off his access, transferred the funds, and skipped town, leaving him high and dry. Thankfully, I anticipated the impending interrogation since, after all, I'm her husband. It's logical to assume I'd be implicated in this. Naturally, she reached out to me as her only call, so I promptly secured a lawyer for her. I extensively researched local defense attorneys to ensure I didn't inadvertently hire a competent one. Instead, I deliberately chose a subpar lawyer, aiming for her conviction and full sentence. What's intriguing is the federal nature of this case. There's no parole or early release. If sentenced to 20 years, it's 20 years served. I attended her bail hearing, using our house as collateral to secure her release. Due to flight risk, she wore an ankle monitor. Despite my disdain, I maintained the facade of a caring husband. Fortunately, her distress spared me any marital duties. Her phone, seized as evidence, was swiftly replaced by me, complete with my spyware. Oddly, James blocked her. When she reached out, he declined contact, aware he'd testify against her. Stubbornly, she rejected a plea deal, adamant someone framed her. She truly believed she'd triumph. Admittedly, she did take half the money, but not all. Nor did she use that account, her own computer, buy a ticket, or fire her partner. The money was returned without issue. The trial amused me. Watching James testify against his lover using computer records revealed his inner conflict. He believed she planned to flee, leaving him behind. Linda felt betrayed by her supposed soulmate, leading to her imprisonment. I felt triumphant during the 3 days of his testimony, witnessing her transition from love to resentment. Despite her efforts on the stand, the overwhelming evidence left her unable to provide a credible defense. She now faces a 20-year sentence in federal prison. With the trial concluded, it was time to deal with James. I had a devious plan for him, though he'd never know it was me behind his downfall. Such a scheme would be satisfying. I instructed my lawyer to update the divorce papers to reflect Linda's conviction and lengthy incarceration. Within days, she was served. Setting up new accounts in Geneva and the Cayman Islands tied to James, I subtly left traces on the dark web, all pointing to his IP address. The ghost of my past exploits resurfaced after 5 years, sparking chatter among hackers. Now, the challenge was to leave a trace convincing enough to implicate an experienced hacker, yet subtle enough to cast doubt on my involvement. I navigated through 10 servers spread across 6 different countries. Eventually, I deployed a legion of bots and initiated an assault on the initial bank. After gaining access, I located the 2 target accounts and moved them to James's newly created accounts. With that task completed, I halted the bank attack, severed my connection to James's computer, and monitored the dark web for any responses. While I didn't anticipate immediate repercussions, caution was paramount. The following morning, another bank fell sufferer to an attack, resulting in the depletion of 4 additional accounts. Now, $20 million resided in the account I had established for James, prompting a search for me. Though they would not uncover me, the digital trail would eventually lead to the Phantom. Various dark web hacker forums ignited with activity, indicating a group tracking the trail, likely the same one from 5 years prior. It was time to conclude this. Returning to the bank, I bypassed James's computer and transferred $20 million to another account in Switzerland, ensuring no trace of the transaction remained. I had no concerns about the cartel reclaiming that money. After reaccessing James's computer, I launched a targeted attack on a bank account containing a tracker. This time, the sum was inconsequential. Only $2 million mattered, solely for the tracker it carried. Last time I fled because I was aware of the thefts and understood how the beacon operated. If I hadn't been informed about the money transfers or the accounts I possessed, and if I hadn't been aware of the tracker linked to that final account, I would have been apprehended. I'm curious to see how James will attempt to justify all this to them. It'd be interesting to watch them grill him about the money when he's clueless about what money they're referring to. Now it's time to sever connections with his computer and eliminate all traces of my involvement. This occurred a week later. I cleared out my computer room and repurposed it as a storage area. While I was wrapping up paperwork for a property I had bought in Montana through an anonymous C corporation, a news report aired about a missing person. James hadn't reported to work for a couple of days, and his whereabouts were unknown. His vehicle was discovered abandoned in a shopping center parking lot, yet he remained elusive. I pondered where he could have gone, but I had to return to packing. "No!" I shouted as they used the cattle prod on me once more, trying to extract information. "I swear I don't know what you're talking about." "Crap, Mr. Ghost," they retorted. "This time you slipped up. The tracking software led us directly to your computer. We found all the data on it. We recovered $2 million from the recent hack, but we want to know where the remaining $20 million is, along with the $30 million from 5 years ago. Give us this information, and we'll end your suffering swiftly. Keep lying, and it'll only get worse." However, I'm clueless. They seized me as I was about to enter my car at the mall. I felt a sharp prick in my neck from a needle. Then, darkness enveloped me. Several hours later, I regained consciousness aboard a private jet, securely fastened to my seat. That's when the interrogation commenced. I had no clue what they were referring to. They repeatedly referred to me as Ghost and inquired about the money they claimed I had stolen a few days prior. Allegedly, $20 million had vanished, along with another $30 million 5 years ago. My protestations of ignorance fell on deaf ears. When confronted with incontrovertible evidence on my personal computer, I was utterly shocked. I could provide them with the information they sought and meet a swift demise. Alternatively, they would extend my remaining, albeit brief, lifespan into unrelenting torment. I sealed my fate when I realized I had no responses to offer them at present. Suspended undressed from the ceiling of a bunker buried deep within the jungles of Colombia, I endured unspeakable torment. My legs were forcibly spread apart, granting them access to my genitals with the aid of cattle prods. It's been 3 agonizing days. On the initial day, I endured beatings for my silence. The following day brought the lash of a whip. Today, it's the agonizing jolt of cattle prods against sensitive areas. I truly wish I could provide them with answers. I dread what tomorrow, the day after, and the following days might bring. James departed over a month ago. His mutilated body was discovered on a Colombian roadside yesterday. Mark will vanish by day's end. After one final stop, I'll embrace my new identity. I've already dispatched all my belongings to a Denver storage facility, funded anonymously via bank transfer. Linda was escorted in and shackled to the table across from me. She appeared worse for wear. Orange certainly wasn't her color. No makeup, hair slightly unkempt, bags under her eyes. It seemed prison hadn't agreed with her yet. "How are you holding up?" I inquired. "Please, Mark, you've got to help me. I'm innocent," she pleaded. "Linda," I sighed, "there's nothing I can do for you. Besides, we're getting divorced." "Please, Mark, I didn't do it and I don't want a divorce." "Just sign the papers, Linda. It's over," I insisted. "Please, Mark, talk to James. He can help me. We were friends once. Please reach out to him," she implored. "Have you heard from James?" I asked. "No, I kept hoping he'd visit, but he never showed," she replied. "Well, he'll never come now. He was eliminated in Colombia." Her face drained of color in shock. "No, he couldn't have," she protested. "Perhaps he didn't know, but they believed he did. Now, Linda, it's best you sign the divorce papers and move on." "But you're leaving me with nothing," she cried. "You won't need anything here. You'll be here for the next 20 years. Please, Mark, you've got to help me. I can't endure staying here. I need to escape," Linda pleaded. "Please, it's time for me to share a story with you, Linda. Maybe this will shed some light," I replied. "About 5 years back, there was a skilled hacker known as the Ghost. He earned this moniker for his expertise in covering his digital tracks, like an elusive specter infiltrating computer systems. The Ghost embarked on a personal mission to target cartels. Over 30 million was pilfered from one cartel before they enlisted other hackers to hunt down this elusive phantom. Sensing the trackers closing in, the Ghost vanished, leaving no trace behind, and forged a new identity. He ceased all digital activities, except for occasional minor hacks for practice. To those around him, he appeared technologically inept, even to his wife. Yes, he fell in love and married. He cherished his wife deeply. But after 3 years of marriage, he stumbled upon a shocking truth. His wife was unfaithful, maintaining a relationship with her real boyfriend throughout their marriage. To compound matters, he discovered that his wife had married him solely to implicate him in the embezzlement scheme she and her boyfriend were orchestrating. Her eyes widened, and her complexion paled when I recounted their scheme to her. Determined not to let it unfold, the Ghost devised a plan for retribution. He hacked into their devices and work network to gather evidence, shifting the blame away from himself and directly onto his wife. He also ensured her boyfriend would believe she was cheating on him. The ultimate blow for his wife was orchestrating her lover's testimony against her, resulting in her lengthy imprisonment, shattering their hearts as they felt betrayed, much like the phantom felt by his wife, I explained. "You," she exhaled, processing the revelation. "Continue. With his wife taken care of, it was time to pursue her lover. Since the cartel was still hunting the phantom, why not exact revenge and make them believe they finally captured their target? So, Ghost utilized his wife's lover's computer to pilfer a large sum from the cartel. Unfortunately, Ghost made a small error, leaving a trace back to the boyfriend. Consequently, the cartel traced the hack, leading to the boyfriend. Authorities suspect he endured torture for over a month before succumbing. Regrettably, he lacked the information the cartel sought. None of this is real or substantiated, but I thought this fictional account might help you cope. While I believe you're not entirely guilty as the evidence suggests, you're far from innocent. Just sign the papers. Imagine the repercussions if someone discovers evidence portraying you as an informant." Her face flushed with rage. "You damn fool!" she yelled, lunging towards me. The guards promptly restrained her, securing her to the table with short chains, preventing her from reaching me. As they escorted her away, shrieking, I exited, heading to a cheap, disposable car parked at the mall. Leaving Mark behind, I walked to my true vehicle awaiting me, ready to drive away with my new identity.